right, this is my lesson number 25 on a series of lectures on how the USA is starting a new Cold War with Russia. All right, and the focus of this lecture is the historic high rate of conscription evasion and desertions. Okay, all right, so my main contention is Russia has an incapacity for offensive military adventurism. They can't do it, right? And all these factors support this. All right, we've been going through them one by one. We'll just do a quick review. So, the first thing I covered is Russia's perfect record of military failures, except one case when they're defending against Nazi German invasion. All right, one time when it was either fight or be slaughtered. It's not going to help you to surrender because you're going to die anyways. Might as well fight. Russia's pathetic performance in Chechnya and Georgia. 2 Chechen wars. They lost the first. All right. Crap performance in Georgia. It was the main motivating reason for the 2008 reforms. And then poor military material capability. Weak GDP, and poor material readiness. All right, then endemic military corruption, which is a long historic pattern, right? My focus has been on the Crimean War and thereafter, and in every damn war there's corruption. And that weakens material readiness and also undermines military personnel problems, right? Especially morale. All right. And then we looked at Russia's many military personnel problems. So today we're going to look at the historic high rates of deferment, conscription evasion, and desertion. Okay. All right. So Russia has a long, sordid history of rampant desertions and conscription evasions. It's like this is just a pattern ingrained within the Russian psyche, right? By conscription evasion, I mean draft dodging. That's kind of a fancy term, but you're trying to get out of it somehow, right? Going back to the Crimean War, World War One, early part of World War Two, Afghanistan, and Chechen War. So we're going to look at these wars here in this case. This lesson is just a survey of Russian desertions and draft dodging to show you how deeply ingrained it is in the Russian pattern of behavior. And if Russia were to start a bloody and protracted war without a defensive justification, it is entirely reasonable to expect yet another example of massive Russian desertions and conscription evasions, which will undermine military effectiveness. All right, so let's take a look at the Crimean War. Way back, this is 1853 to 56, right? All right. And examples include the mass desertion at Bucharest. Many disaffected Russian troops took the opportunity to desert from the units and hide in the city. Okay, that's that author. 2. The mass desertions at Chernaya River were up to 1,700 deserted. The mass desertions and uprising at Sevastopol, and here's a quote, around 20 soldiers went missing every damn day, most during the sorties or bombardments when they were not so closely watched by their commanding officers. The main reason men gave for their desertion was that they had been given virtually no food and only rotten meat. And why was that? Because of Russian, rampant corruption. It's a pattern within Russia. That corruption is a long pattern too. Other weaknesses for other reasons for Russian desertion include: A, forced conscription of serfs. Serfs were no different from the American slaves. B, brutalization of troops, in which flogging were a daily aspect of a disciplinary system. C, soldiers were sacrificed in huge numbers for relatively minor gains by aristocratic senior officers who cared little for their welfare by the peasant conscripts, but a great deal for their own promotion. All right. So why should they give a damn? Right? These officers don't give a damn about them. They're sacrificing them. D. Incompetent tactical leadership by officers. Quote, because most Russian officers did not waste their time studying war. For most of the army's officers spent their peacetime lives playing cards, drinking, and visiting brothels. All right. I mean, to me, that's criminal. E. Wretched medical conditions between 1825 and 1850. 30,000 Russians died in combat, but at least 900 died of disease. Okay. So, in other words, for every Russian soldier killed in combat, 30 died due to disease, due to horrid sanitary conditions, and wretched medical care. No doubt that created a massive morale problem, which fueled desertions. And Russia continued to have horrendous medical support up through the Chechen Wars. All right. World War One mass surrender. In 1915, 1,365,000, right, surrendered. And then in 1916, that number even increased to 1,505,000. And in 1917, it fell off largely because the war's ending for the Russians. They're surrendering 574,000 with a total number of 3,638,271 Russian soldiers surrendered, representing 23.66% of the total men drafted into the Russian army. That's nearly 1 in 4 surrendered, right? That is just pathetic. 1 out of every 4 surrenders. On top of that, you have mass desertions during World War I. Military failures and war weariness contribute to mass desertions, and by the autumn of 1917, approximately 2 million Russian soldiers had deserted. Now, these guys formed marauding bands of deserters, attacked villages and shtetls, small towns with large proportions of Jews, stole property and food, terrorized the local population, and redistributed land from the nobility. Total of surrender and desertions is over 5.6 million. Now that's an immense number. That's an insane number. Take a look at how the total number of Americans who served in World War I. 4.7 million Americans served in World War I. So more Russians deserted or surrendered in World War I than the entire American military. So that's like our entire military, more than our entire military surrendered or deserted. The whole damn, every single one in our whole military surrendered or deserted. That's insane. I'm telling you, it's a big problem in Russia. During the Soviet era, the unofficial but deeply institutionalized practice called Desertion, in which conscripts were severely beaten, burned, left to freeze in the cold, homosexually raped, forced at gunpoint to provide oral sex, extorted, stolen from, and sometimes killed, fueled waves of draft dodging and desertion and self-mutilation, right? They want to get the hell out. They're going to, whatever, shoot themselves in the foot or whatever. Desertion has deep historic roots going back to the reign of Peter the Great, 1682 to 1725. I mean, that's going way back. And is greatly exacerbated under conditions of war, and it poses a considerable challenge to the maintenance of morale and discipline. This quote is from the Rand Corporation report. Desertion destroys unit cohesion, morale, training, and chain of command, with the Stariki, who are the senior cadre of conscripts, like the second year guys, supplanting the authority of the NCOs. And these guys don't know crap, right? They don't know leadership. They don't know weapons. They don't know tactics. They're just the most senior bullies, right? So it undermines NCO leadership. High rates of draft deferments and bribery of local, they're recruiting officials to evade draft. So they're bribing these guys. And these guys are corrupt. They're taking money and letting these guys off to get some money, right? So that's draft dodging. That's one of the ways they draft dodge. All right, now due to the high rates of desertion from the Red Army during the Russian Civil War, all right, that's 1917 to 1923, right after they failed World War One, they fought each other. The Czech secret police conducted summary field court martials and executions of deserters and slackers. All right, so they're knocking these guys off. They have such a problem. In early part of World War II, there were high rates of Soviet surrender and desertion. Germany invaded the USSR on June 22nd of 1941. All right. So in little over 3 months, by October, all right, the NKVD barrier troops had already detained 657,364 who were retreating or deserting, of which 25,878 were arrested, and then over 10,000 were sentenced to death. Okay, this is from a report from the NKVD chief, right, at the time, dated October 10th, same date. With the rapid German onslaught by February 1942, only 7 months into the war, 3.4 million Soviet soldiers had surrendered. That's insane. Only 7 months into the war, right? 3.4 million Soviet soldiers surrendered. 2 million of which would later die due to intentional German starvation. Right? Well, they would die but within this time, you'll see. By February, they would die. 2 million would die by February. That's insane. Of which, of those held by the Germans, according to Mark et al. In his book, Stalin's Defectors, 117,000 voluntarily crossed the front lines, risking life and limb, getting shot at by the Germans to escape to the Germans. You got a problem if they want to escape to the enemy. Even worse, as much as 6% of the Soviet soldiers taken prisoner decided to fight for the Germans. Here's a quote. Quote, no other Allied army in the Second World War had such a large share of defectors. Guys, not just surrendering, but joining the enemy to fight with the enemy. Fight for the enemy. Edel identified 4 reasons for defecting. Survivalism, all right? If you don't fight for the Germans, you're going to die of starvation. The Germans were intentionally starving them. Defeatism, right? Political opposition to the Soviet regime, communism and forced collectivization, things like that. Active anti-Stalinism. They hated Stalin. He was a murderous bastard, right? He's killing millions and millions within Russia. A total of 1.6 million Soviet soldiers and citizens collaborated with the fascists. There was, after all, much disaffection with the Soviet regime, especially among the many who were brutalized by Stalin. This included peasants who resisted forced collectivization and upon whom Stalin waged war through a policy of starvation that killed as many as 5 million between 1929 and 1933. 5 million. Stalin's murder spree flared again between 1936 and 1938. This is the Great Purge or Great Terror to eliminate opposition within the Communist Party, getting rid of government officials who he didn't like or didn't trust, Red Army officers. He depleted the Russian Red Army officer corps. Wealthy peasants, ethnic minorities, national minorities, and the intelligentsia. Sweeping arrests were made, followed by imprisonment, torture, forced confessions at show trials, followed by mass executions. All right. Others were sent to brutal labor camps where they faced starvation, disease, exposure to severe elements, overwork, and often death. As many as 1.2 million died in the Great Purge. So you add these together, these 2 purges, that's 6.2 million killed in only 2 purges at the hands of Stalin. Right? No wonder they didn't like the guy. I mean, come on. Obviously, these conditions do much to explain the mass surrender, desertion, collaboration with the enemy. Right? They hate communism. They hate Stalin. However, those who surrendered to the Germans suffered severely, with roughly 2 out of the 3.4 million Soviet POWs dying from deliberate starvation by the Germans by February 1942. By February, within only 7 months, two out of 3.4 million starved. All right, that's only 7 months into the war. So I believe this was a key reason the latter part of World War II is the only case in which the Russians/Soviets fought well in all of their wars, going back to the Crimean War to the present day. They fought like crap in all the wars. Only the latter part of World War II did they fight fairly well, right? Uh, the German genocide made the choice simple: fight hard and risk dying, or be killed with certainty by the Nazis. It's not going to do you any good to surrender. You're not going to survive, right? You're going to die in Nazi, confinement. The high rate of Soviet surrender and desertion forced Stalin to take action. I decided I'm not going to read through this. All right, it's probably more information than you need. He had two orders: Stalin Order 270 and Stalin Order 277, really to threaten any desertion and surrender. Right? You try to desert, you try to surrender, you're going straight up to the worst fighting. Right? All right, things like that. All right, so mass desertion in the Chechen Wars. All right, so here's the last example. So breaking decades of secrecy, the Russian Defense Ministry, right? This is not some reporter or research. This is the Defense Ministry in 2002 admitted to 2,265 desertions in the first half of the year. However, the true number is closer to 40,000 annually. So this is that many in 6 months, but they say annually it's closer to 40,000 according to the Soldiers' Mothers Committee, a public organization that aids deserters. So this committee here is helping deserters and conscription evaders, right? And that's according to a report by the Christian Science Monitor. All right, so that's during the Chechen War. Still a lot of desertions. 40,000 each year, right? 2002. So this is during the Second Chechen War. First Chechen War was 94 to 96. Second Chechen War was 1999 to 2009. 10-year war. 40,000 every damn year. All right, so conclusion is massive amounts of draft dodging and desertion are a historic pattern in Russia's wars, from the Crimean War up to the present day. Now, post-2008 reforms are intended to improve this military manpower weakness, right? Which is only one of many manpower weaknesses within the Russian military. However, if one were to extrapolate the long line of Russian history, it is reasonable to expect that this historic pattern will continue in future Russian wars, especially among the conscripts, and especially in a protracted, bloody, adventuristic war lacking a defensive justification. They're going to say, screw this, I'm not fighting and dying for this bullshit war, right? And they're going to desert. That has been the pattern within Russia. All right. And obviously that is going to undermine military effectiveness. All right. That's it for that brief lecture.